Discovered my spouse's infidelity following the birth of a baby who clearly didn't resemble us, leading to my decision to seek a divorce post-delivery. Jacob stood in the maternity ward, his heart swelling with a cocktail of joy and anxiety. The sound of a newborn's cry pierced the sterile air of the hospital, announcing the arrival of his and Mathilde's first child. Nurses buzzed around, their faces hidden behind masks but their eyes reflecting the happiness of the moment. Jacob's eyes were fixed on the door, eagerly awaiting the first glimpse of his new family. The door finally swung open, and there she was, Mathilde, looking exhausted but radiant, cradling a tiny bundle in her arms. Jacob's heart skipped a beat as he moved closer, his emotions a whirlwind of excitement and nervous anticipation. He peered down at the tiny face peeking out from the swaddle. But as he looked closer, his heart sank. The baby, with olive skin and curly dark hair, bore no resemblance to either Jacob, with his fair complexion and straight light brown hair, or Mathilde, with her blonde hair and blue eyes. Confusion clouded his mind, followed swiftly by a sinking feeling in his gut. "She's beautiful," Jacob murmured, his voice a mix of wonder and concealed worry. Mathilde's smile didn't quite reach her eyes as she noticed Jacob's hesitation. "Yes, she is," she replied softly, avoiding his gaze. The room, filled with the soft beeping of machines and the muffled sounds of the hospital, felt increasingly suffocating to Jacob. His mind raced with questions he dared not ask. Could it be a genetic anomaly? A throwback gene from generations past? The rational part of his brain tried to make sense of it all, but a nagging doubt crept in, festering with every passing second. As the nurse gently took the baby to conduct routine checks, Jacob found himself alone with Mathilde. He searched her face for answers, for any sign of the truth he feared. "Mathilde, is there something I should know?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mathilde's eyes flickered with a mixture of emotions, fear, guilt, perhaps regret. "Jacob, she began, but her voice trailed off, choked by unspoken words. Jacob felt a surge of frustration. The joy of fatherhood he had imagined was now tainted with betrayal's bitter taste. He had dreamed of this moment, of holding his child, of starting a family with the woman he loved. But now, those dreams seemed like distant fantasies, shattered by the harsh light of reality. "I need to know, Mathilde. Is she mine?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Mathilde turned her face away, her silence more telling than any words could be. Jacob felt a chasm opening between them, a gap that might never be bridged. The trust and love that had built their relationship now seemed fragile, ready to crumble under the weight of this unspoken truth. As the nurse returned with the baby, placing her gently in Mathilde's arms, Jacob felt an overwhelming sense of detachment. He looked at the infant, his daughter in name, but in his heart, he knew the truth. The joyous arrival of his child had turned into a moment of bitter revelation. Jacob knew that his life, and his relationship with Mathilde, would never be the same again. The path ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain: the truth, whatever it may be, had to come to light. Jacob lay awake that night, the dim glow of the hospital room casting long shadows across his face. The soft breathing of Mathilde and the occasional coo of the baby in the bassinet were the only sounds that filled the space. He stared at the ceiling, his mind a turbulent sea of emotions. Doubt, anger, and a profound sense of betrayal churned within him. In the pale light, he watched Mathilde sleeping, her face serene and unaware of the storm raging in his heart. How could she do this to him? To them? Their life together, once a picture of happiness and mutual trust, now felt like a facade. As dawn broke, Jacob's resolve hardened. He needed answers, and he couldn't let his emotions cloud his judgment. He waited for Mathilde to wake, watching as the morning light washed over her face, highlighting the lines of stress and exhaustion. "Mathilde," Jacob's voice was steady, but his heart raced. We need to talk about the baby. Mathilde's eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, she seemed to be lost in a daze. Then, as realization dawned, her expression turned to one of dread. Jacob, I can explain, she began, her voice trembling. I need the truth, Mathilde. Is she mine? Jacob's demand was direct, his gaze unwavering. The room was thick with tension. Mathilde sat up, clutching the baby closer to her chest. Jacob, it was a mistake. A moment of weakness. I never meant for this to happen, she confessed, her voice breaking. Jacob felt a cold wave wash over him. The confirmation of his fears hit him like a physical blow. A mistake, he echoed, the word bitter in his mouth. Our marriage, our vows, our plans to start a family, was all that a mistake too? No, Jacob, it wasn't like that, Mathilde pleaded, her eyes brimming with tears. It was just one time. I was lost, confused, and it just happened. Jacob's heart ached with a pain he had never known. The woman he loved, the partner he had trusted with his life, had betrayed him in the most unimaginable way. And you thought you could just hide it? Build our family on a lie? I thought. I hoped. Mathilde's words trailed off, lost in a sea of regret. Jacob stood up, his movements mechanical. The future he had envisioned, watching his child grow, teaching them to ride a bike, taking family vacations, evaporated before his eyes. I can't do this, Mathilde. I can't raise a child that isn't mine, a constant reminder of your betrayal. Mathilde reached out, her hand trembling. Jacob, please, I love you. We can work through this. We can be a family. But Jacob's decision was firm. I can't. I need time to think, to process all this. He paused, his voice softening slightly. I'll always care for you, Mathilde, but I can't be a part of this lie. I'm sorry. With that, Jacob walked out of the room, leaving behind the life he once knew. The sound of Mathilde's sobs echoed in his ears, a haunting reminder of the love they had shared and the future they had lost. In the weeks that followed, Jacob's life became a blur of legal consultations and sleepless nights. The decision to divorce Mathilde, while clear in his mind, was fraught with emotional turmoil and logistical complexities. He found himself navigating a labyrinth of paperwork, appointments, and legal jargon, all the while grappling with the heartache of his crumbling marriage. Jacob sat in the stark office of his divorce attorney, a middle-aged man with a demeanor as gray as his suit. The lawyer methodically outlined the steps of the divorce process, but Jacob's thoughts were elsewhere. He couldn't help but replay the moments he and Mathilde had shared, the plans they had made, now shattered like glass under the weight of her betrayal. The grounds for divorce are clear, Mr. Reynolds, the attorney was saying. Given the circumstances, the court will likely favor your position, especially regarding financial settlements and custody arrangements. Jacob's heart sank at the mention of custody. The baby, his daughter, yet not his, was an innocent party in this entire debacle. He thought of the tiny face that bore no resemblance to his own and felt a pang of sorrow for the child caught in the crossfire of their failed relationship. I understand, Jacob replied, his voice barely above a whisper. And Mathilde? What will happen to her? The lawyer glanced up, adjusting his glasses. That will depend on her legal representation and the decisions made in court. But given the situation, she may face some challenges. The meetings and legal discussions seemed endless, each one a painful reminder of the life he was leaving behind. Jacob found little solace in his solitary evenings, the silence of his apartment a stark contrast to the life he had envisioned as a father and husband. In a bid for distraction, Jacob threw himself into his work, but the mundanity of daily tasks couldn't fill the void Mathilde's betrayal had left. He would often find himself staring blankly at his computer screen, lost in thoughts of what could have been. One evening, as he sifted through old photographs, a wave of memories flooded over him. There were pictures of him and Mathilde on their wedding day, radiant and full of hope. Images of their travels together, smiling in front of exotic backdrops. Each photo was a painful reminder of the happiness that had once seemed unbreakable. Amidst the turmoil, Jacob began to question everything. Had there been signs he had missed? Were there moments of neglect on his part that had driven Mathilde away? He pondered these questions late into the night, searching for answers in the darkness. As the divorce proceedings progressed, Jacob felt a growing sense of emptiness. He realized that this legal dissolution of their marriage was more than just the end of their relationship, it was the loss of a shared future, of dreams built together. Despite the pain, Jacob knew that moving forward was the only option. He had to rebuild his life, piece by broken piece. The path ahead was uncertain and daunting, but he understood that closure and healing were necessary. The journey to find peace and perhaps, in time, forgiveness, was just beginning. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, Jacob found himself engulfed in a sea of mixed emotions. It wasn't just the present turmoil that troubled him, it was also the uncovering of a past he never knew existed. During one of the mediation sessions, a slip of the tongue by Mathilde's attorney revealed a side of her life that Jacob had been oblivious to. Curiosity, mixed with a sense of betrayal, led Jacob to delve deeper. He started piecing together the fragments of Mathilde's past, seeking out old friends and acquaintances who might shed light on the life she had before they met. One chilly autumn evening, Jacob found himself sitting across from an old friend of Mathilde's, a woman named Clara, in a quiet cafe. Clara, hesitant at first, began to open up as the evening wore on. She painted a picture of a different Mathilde, one who was impulsive, adventurous, and at times, reckless with her heart. Jacob listened, his coffee growing cold, as Clara recounted tales of Mathilde's past relationships and struggles. There was a story of a passionate but tumultuous relationship with an artist, a whirlwind romance with a musician, each tale a piece of the puzzle that was Mathilde. It's like she was always searching for something, you know? A kind of love or excitement that she couldn't quite grasp, Clara said, a hint of sadness in her eyes. Jacob felt a mixture of sadness and frustration. He had known Mathilde as steady and reliable, the woman he had decided to build a life with. These stories painted a picture of someone altogether different, someone he realized he never truly knew. As he drove home that night, Jacob's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. He remembered their early days, the way Mathilde would sometimes go quiet, lost in a world of her own. He had always assumed it was just her way, not a sign of something deeper, something hidden. In the days that followed, Jacob continued his unintentional investigation into Mathilde's past. Each new discovery felt like a blow, not because of jealousy or anger, but because of the profound realization that their marriage had been built on a foundation of half-truths. Amidst this turmoil, Jacob found himself facing a complex emotional landscape. He grappled with feelings of pity for Mathilde, who had clearly been battling her own demons. But alongside this pity was a growing sense of liberation. Understanding the truth about Mathilde's past somehow made it easier for Jacob to accept the end of their marriage. He began to see their relationship in a new light. Perhaps their marriage had been doomed from the start, not just because of Mathilde's infidelity, but because they were two people who fundamentally misunderstood each other. As the divorce neared its final stages, Jacob found himself coming to terms with these revelations. He started to let go of the anger and betrayal, replacing them with a sense of closure. He realized that understanding Mathilde's past was a crucial step in moving forward, a way to make peace with the end of a chapter in his life. This newfound understanding did not erase the pain or the sense of loss, but it provided Jacob with a clearer path to healing. He was ready to close this chapter and begin anew, armed with the lessons of the past and a hopeful gaze towards the future. The final papers of the divorce arrived on a cold, clear morning. As Jacob sat at his kitchen table, the document in his hands felt both heavy and liberating. Signing his name at the bottom, he felt the finality of the act, a definitive end to a chapter in his life that had brought both immense joy and profound sorrow. In the weeks that followed, Jacob slowly began to rebuild his life. The apartment that once echoed with the laughter and conversations he shared with Mathilde now resonated with a quiet solitude. He found solace in small routines, in the peaceful moments of early morning coffees and evening walks. However, it wasn't just the solitude that occupied his thoughts. Jacob often found himself reflecting on his relationship with Mathilde, turning over the memories and conversations in his mind. He realized that their marriage, though flawed, had taught him invaluable lessons about love, trust, and the complexities of human relationships. One day, Jacob decided to visit the park they used to go to, a place filled with memories of their early days together. As he walked among the autumn leaves, he thought about the journey he had been on since the day he learned the truth about the baby. He had grappled with anger, betrayal, and heartache, but he had also discovered resilience and a capacity for forgiveness he hadn't known he possessed. It was in these moments of reflection that Jacob found a sense of peace. He had come to terms with the fact that while the marriage had ended, the experiences and lessons it brought were integral parts of his life. He understood that forgiveness was not about condoning Mathilde's actions but about freeing himself from the chains of bitterness and resentment. Jacob also contemplated the baby, the innocent life caught in the midst of their failed marriage. He hoped that Mathilde would find happiness and provide a loving home for her child. Despite everything, he wished them both well, a sentiment that marked his own growth and healing. As the days turned into weeks, Jacob found new ways to engage with the world around him. He reconnected with old friends, took up hobbies he had long neglected, and even began to explore the possibility of dating again. Life, once shadowed by the pain of his divorce, was brightening once again. One evening, as he sat in a cafe, a book in hand, Jacob realized how far he had come. The betrayal that had once consumed his thoughts was now a distant memory, a scar that had healed over time. He had learned to embrace his new reality, to find joy in the small things, and to open his heart to new possibilities. As he looked out of the cafe window, watching the hustle and bustle of the city, Jacob felt a renewed sense of optimism. The future, once a source of dread, now held promise and potential. He was ready to embark on this new chapter of his life, one filled with hope, learning, and the possibility of new love. With a contented sigh, Jacob closed his book and stepped out into the evening air, ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead. The past, with all its pain and lessons, was behind him. The future was unwritten, and for the first time in a long time, that excited him.